Hey, it's in progress.
Yes.
Thank you, Walid. All right, we are now live to the world. So, welcome everybody to Tales and Tunes for July. Welcome to you if you've been before, and if you haven't been before, I think it's only Tony that you haven't been before. So, very welcome. And yeah, what do I need to say? So we normally start off with a bit of extreme storytelling from me, and then we go around the room in the order that you arrived, which I think is kind of Keith, Tony, Norman, and then Chris. If that's all good with you guys.
Yeah.
And you can share tales or tunes or whatever you have. I'm not sure we've got any musicians coming tonight, so I might have to make something up. Lovely. But let's start, as we always do, with a little bit of extreme storytelling, which is when I make up a story entirely from your suggestions. Oh, I was doing this with a school group recently, and had this beautiful story about Death wanting to find the city of his birth and going into battle with the god of light in order to be able to get to his lost city. Turns out he was born in Atlantis. So there you go. That's where the Grim Reaper came from. So they've set a pretty high bar, the year sixes. So what I need from you guys for our story is who or what would you like the story to be about? Let's have a few suggestions and pick our favourite. Who would you like to be the hero of the story?
Soldier.
A soldier, lovely.
Soldier. Right. Well, I've got a story in mind here, so we might. It could be a bit of a theme. So, what about Midsummer, Justine?
Midsummer. Okay.
Does that help you?
We could set it in Midsummer. That's cool. But so far, so are we happy for a soldier to be the hero of our story, or do you want to suggest something else?
Yeah, and since we were just talking about gentlemen earlier, it has to be thunder in it.
There has to be thunder in it. Okay.
Thunder
Lovely.
in it, and a bird.
And a bird. Well, maybe then our bird should be the. I wonder if a bird should be the thing that tries to stop our soldier getting whatever it is that he wants. Let's decide what the soldier wants in our story more than anything in the world. What's he going to be on a quest for? What does he want?
Oh, true love.
Oh, true love's a good suggestion. Let's have some more.
Get home.
To get home.
Get home. That's a good. That's a good one.
Admit, yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah.
Shall we go with the soldier wants to go?
Home to his true love.
Doesn't hurt either, does it?
No, home to his true love.
He wants to get home to his true love. Okay. And are we going to say that the thing that stops him is that tries to stop him, that tries to get in his way, is a bird of some description?
Yeah.
Okay, then.
And maybe we can add a lost wedding ring.
Oh, a lost wedding ring. Lovely. Okay. Somewhere in there is going to be a lost wedding ring. And which bird of our choice is going to be the one that's trying to thwart our soldier's attempt to get home to his true love?
But going from my own experience, I would say a goose.
A goose, yeah.
They're good at getting in your way.
They are.
Make it a Canada goose.
A Canada
goose.
We just had Canada Day, so yeah.
And Canada geese they just kind of take over wherever they are.
They are obnoxious creatures.
Yeah, I'll tell a quick anecdote for you then. Just Canada guys, I've just remembered this. When our boys were young, and I'm going back, 25 years ago, we used to go to a duck pond not far from here, and they had all sorts of exotic ducks and things, but it had some Canada geese, and our boys were only, 3-5 years old, and they used to call them toe nibblers because they would come, as Norman says, and they would just peck your feet if you didn't give them any food.
Oh.
Yeah. They're just so determined creatures, I've got to admire their tenacity. Right then, I shall begin. Oh, can we give our soldier a name? What would you like his name to be?
Ooh. Oh, crikey. Anton.
Anton the soldier. Okay.
Is that all right?
That'll do. All right. So how this works is I will begin the story, and when I need a little bit of help, I will ask you guys to jump in and give me an idea, and then I'll carry on. Let us begin. Once upon a time, not so very long ago, there was a soldier. His name was Anton, and he had been fighting far, far away from home for a long, long time. And they'd been waiting for the end of the war, for the victors to be named. And for the purpose of our story, it doesn't matter which side was the victor, but when the war ended, Anton knew that he could go home. Now he was a long, long way from home, and all of the resources of the army had been used up in the battle. And they had to say to the soldiers that they had to make their own way back home again. So Anton, not sure where in the world he was, just set out. He headed out towards the setting sun because he knew that his home was in the west where the setting sun was. And he walked and he walked and he walked and he walked and he walked. And he walked and he walked and he walked and he walked. And he came to a village and he stopped for the night. And he went to the local tavern. He said, I'm not quite sure how to find my way home. I come from a land that's far to the west of here and I feel like I'm lost. And so the tavern owner said, you're one of the soldiers fighting in that battle. I know where your homeland is, but it is a long way from here. So tell me, gentlemen, what did the tavern owner say that Anton should do to find his way home? Where are we going to send him next?
To the bridge across the river.
So he said, you need to carry on straight. Just keep walking towards the setting sun. You go to the bridge across the river. And so he spent the night in that tavern and he woke up the next morning and he set out again and he walked and he walked and he walked and he walked. And as he was walking, he started thinking about his true love, who I'm going to call Mary, because Mary always feels like the name of true love in story. And he started thinking about Mary and how long he'd been away from her. And he felt in his pocket. And in his pocket all this time, all the way through the battle, had been the wedding ring. The wedding ring that he was going to give to her. He didn't have as much money as a soldier to buy an engagement ring and a wedding ring. He'd just bought the wedding ring. And he'd promised her that when he came back, he would put the wedding ring on her finger. And he was crossing the bridge and he got the ring out. And he could see in the distance, he could see that there was the sea that he had to cross to go home. And as soon as he went over the bridge, he was just about to put that ring back in his pocket when he heard up in the sky a squawking, a cawing. Now, I don't know if anyone can do a Canada Goose impression. I'm Norman, it has to be you. Give us a Canada Goose impression.
Very good.
Very good. And there was a honking, a squawking, and there was a V of Canada Geese coming down. And the soldier, Anton, he was so surprised, he forgot to put that ring back in his pocket. And of course, as soon as he did, it was out there, and the Canada Goose took it straight out of his hand and swallowed it down. Anton went, that was my ring for my true love, for Mary. And he started chasing the goose. And the goose was running off with all its friends after him. He said, goose, that was for my true love, Mary. Now, they just have to be a very special magic goose. And it turned round and said, well, it's mine now. And Anton said, but I have been fighting a battle a long way from home. And not far from here is the sea that I need to cross to get back to my homeland. I need to take that ring. Canada Goose says, you cannot have it unless you do something for me first. So what, gentlemen, does this Canada Goose want to return this ring? We're not quite sure I was going to get it back out of him. We'll go cover that later. What does the Canada Goose want in return for his help?
Oh,
Fish.
A fish.
fish.
Several.
Fish. He said to Anton, he said, I shall not return this ring to you until you fill my belly with something else. We have not done well in this river. Since there has been a war, the river has been devoid of fish. You need to catch me a whole shoal full of fish. And when you've done that, then I will return your ring. Anton said, but I'm a soldier traveling home. I don't have anything to fish with. The Canada Goose said, tough. Bring me the fish or you don't have this ring. Anton said, well, you must walk with me, Goose, then to the sea, and then I will see what I can do. So Anton carried along the path to the sea, and the Canada Goose walked behind him. And all of the other little Canada Goose walked behind him. This big old line behind him because he was the leader once. And they walked and they walked and they talked and they walked. And Anton said to the Canada Goose, why do you need quite so many fish? And the Canada Goose turned behind me. This is my entire family. I need to feed all of them. And your war destroyed our river. So he said, it wasn't my war. I was just fighting in it. He said, still, the war affected everybody. I need your help. So they walked and they talked and they talked and they walked and they walked and they talked until finally they reached the shore. And Anton could see the big ferry boat that would take him across the sea back to his true love, Mary. But he could also see on the other side of the bay a fishing port. And he said, right, come with me, Canada Goose, and bring all of your little Canada Geese behind you. And we will go to the fishermen and we will ask for their help. So Anton went up to the first fishing boat and he said to the fishermen, I need your help. I need to catch a whole shoal full of fish for this Canada Goose so he can give me back the ring. We're not quite sure how yet, but we'll work that out. So give me back the ring so I can take it to my true love, Mary, and we can get married. The fisherman said, you need to do something for me first. Everyone wants something in this story. So what was the fisherman going to ask Anton for? As if he had not been asked enough by battling for his country all that time. What does the fisherman want?
What does the fisherman want? Perfect weather.
Perfect weather.
Every day.
A boat.
A
boat would be good.
So the fisherman said, well, it's all very well, but the only way that I can go out to sea is if you gather me a boat. Anton said, I thought this was your boat. He said, no, this is my brother's boat. And my brother will not set out to sea unless there is perfect weather, unless it is the weather of midsummer. Wow. Anton knew that it was only a wise person that would be able to, maybe a magic person that would be able to create this weather so that he could get the ring back. So he could give the Canada Goose, it's becoming a catalogue story. So he could give the Canada Goose the fish so that the Canada Goose would give him his ring so he could get home to his true love, Mary. So they went to the edge of the village because, as you know, every single wise woman always lives at the edge of the village. They went to the edge of the village and they knocked on the door of the tiniest shack, which is also always where the wise woman lives in stories. So they knocked on the door like this. Knock. You can find something to knock on wherever you are. There we go. And the door opened with a creak. And there, sure enough, was the village old wise woman. Old wise woman said, a soldier and a goose. What could you possibly want? Anton said, well, this goose wants a shoal of fish. And I can't get a shoal of fish unless there is perfect midsummer weather. And there isn't, and because I need perfect midsummer weather so that the fisherman's brother will let him take the boat out. The wise woman said, well, I do have a spell that I can cast that will bring beautiful midsummer weather. But I need you to give me something first, because everyone wants something in this story. What is it that the wise woman wants that we can give her? Like easily. Otherwise we're here all night.
I would say a wise man.
A wise man.
She said,
because she's been wiser
him.
than everybody. Nobody was her equal.
She said, all I need is a wise man. Because to be honest, I'm fed up with being the wise woman all alone at the end of the village. I need a wise man. You find me a wise man, and then I will cast this spell for you. And Anton thought about it, and he said, surely a man who won't put out to sea unless it's good weather is a wise man. The wise woman thought about it and went, do you know what? You're not wrong there. So this is what happened. Anton went to find the brother of the fisherman, and he said to the brother of the fisherman, he said, I understand from your brother, that's the other one, that you are in need of a wife, and I have found a wise woman that is in need of a wise man. And we have agreed that a wise man is somebody who will not put out to sea unless it's really good weather. So if you could come to the wise woman, and then she will cast the spells that will be good weather, and then your brother can take the fishing boat out, and then we can catch a shoal of fish, and I can give them to the goose, the Canada Goose, and then the Canada Goose can feed all of his family, and then he will give me the wedding ring, and I can get on the ferry to go back to my true love, Mary. So that's exactly what happened. The brother of the fisherman said, I was also looking for a wise woman to go with my wise man status. So Anton and the Canada Goose, they went to the wise woman's hut. They said to the wise woman, here you are, here is the wise man. The wise woman said, then I will cast my spell. And she waved her hands over her pot in front of her. And she raised her hands to the air, and suddenly in the sky there was thunder and there was lightning. And then, shazam, perfect weather. You see? The wise woman said, in my world, there is always storm before the calm. And then with that perfect midsummer weather, the brother said that his brother could take the fishing boat out. So the Anton and the Canada Goose, all the little Canada Geese stayed on the boat because they wouldn't stay on the shore because they wouldn't go on the boat. Anton and the Canada Goose and the fishermen, they went out, and because it was such beautiful weather, the fish were jumping into the nets. They caught a whole shoal of fish, and they took it back. And then the Canada Goose took each fish and gave it to each of his family, went back for miles. They're big old flocks. And when he'd fed all of his family, he did another of his honks, Norman. Give me some honking. And this honk going, and as he did so, he spat out the ring. And Anton picked it up from the floor and said, "Thank you very much. And now I shall be on my way." And so he said goodbye to the Canada Goose, and the Canada Goose and all his family flew above him ahead of the boat as he got on the boat, and he went across the sea. And at the port at the other side, well, I don't know how she knew. Maybe it was magic. But there was his true love, Mary, waiting, as she had been waiting every day. And when she saw him get off the boat, she said, "Oh, Anton, you are home." He said, "Yes, and I have come to keep my promise." And he showed her the wedding ring and said, "Will you marry me?" And she said yes, and slipped on that ring. And you know, the two of them lived happily ever after. The end. That was fun.
That was good. That was good. That was almost turning into the never-ending story, that one, Justine.
It just, you know, when you realise something's becoming a catalogue story, but you haven't quite remembered every single stage of it.
Did you?
A little addendum. I forgot that maybe it's because the Canada geese actually have a fluting sound. So it
okay.
starts off and like that. That's why I did the second one the second way, the way I did it.
Yeah. Oh, that was crucial.
And that was good to kind of like get the ring out. It needed that second sound for like the ring to be
that's
regurgitated.
right.
Yeah, it did. That was a crucial part of the story, that, Norman. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Fabulous. All right.
And another story came to mind, but I will tell it at another time. But
yeah, save it for later. So we said Keith first. Keith, are you ready to go? Lovely. I'm going to spotlight you, and then you can unspotlight yourself.
Yeah, if that's okay. I'm happy to do that.
Lovely. I love your background again, Keith.
Yeah, it's a tapestry. It isn't visual, virtual.
Oh, it's lovely.
Yeah. Well, there was a young man called Jack, and he lived in Scotland a long time ago, and he was a shepherd. He loved looking after the sheep. And he lived with his mother, and they were very poor. And the Lord didn't pay him very much. But he was happy looking after his sheep. And sometimes he'll be looking over his sheep and making sure they're okay and not far weltered in any way. And he looked over the valley and he'd see the trees on the hillside, the great oak trees. There's a circle of trees and a great oak in the centre of them. And then down the other side of the valley was some birch trees. And down right in the bottom of the valley, there was a stream. And in the summertime, he could see the salmon leaping along there and shimmering in the sunlight. Now, on the day, his mother came up with some food, a lunch. And she would often go along the not many hedgerows, but stone walls and any bushes that happened to be there, collecting any wool that had been caught from the coats of the sheep. And she would take them home, and she would card them, and she would spin them into thread, and she would then make some ganses, and she'd take them to the market to sell, just to help make ends meet. Well, she brought the bread and cheese the lunchtime, and I sat on the hillside overlooking the valley and the trees. And she said to Jack, "I had a strange dream last night. I had a dream about the trees uprooting themselves and go dancing down the hillside. And it reminded me of what my mother and my father said about the trees. Only every 70 odd years, but the trees would uproot themselves on Midsummer's Eve. And it's midsummer tomorrow, it's Midsummer's Eve. And so watch out, just see if it is the time when the trees will go dancing." And she said to him, well, when they uproot themselves and go off the dance, they leave these birth pits, they leave these holes in the ground, and right down at the bottom of each pit, there's some treasure, some gold, silver, some diamonds, pearls. And you go down with a bag and just don't be greedy though. Just take just a certain amount from maybe one of the smaller holes from one of the smaller trees. Don't be greedy. And then she took out of her bag a long woolen rope that she'd knitted with 12 loops in it. And she gave it to Jack and said, take this, it might be useful. And he took it and he put it in his bag. And she then went off home. And then it was getting later in the day, and the birds were making not just a noise, but they were chirping, twitching away and twittering away and twittering away, and make such a noise and doing a promotion. And because he spent so much time with the birds and the nature, that he could understand what the bird said. And he said to the robin, what are you twittering about? What's happening? And the robin said, well, today's Midsummer's Eve. And tonight, the trees are going to uproot themselves and go dancing. And because they're going to be uprooting themselves and moving around, they're going to shake us out of our nests. And so we're going to fly off for the night and find somewhere safe. Perhaps the barn owl will let us sleep in his barn for the night. So we'll be safe. And then the birds, the robin flew away. Bye. And he heard a crack of a stick behind him, Jack. And there was the lard. And the lard said to Jack, what were the birds saying? Because he understood that Jack could understand the language of the birds. And Jack said, well, tonight the trees are going to uproot themselves and they're going to go dancing down the side of the valley. And the lion said, I'd heard that when they do this, that right down in their birth pits, in their holes that they leave behind, there's silver and gold, there's treasure. I will come back tonight, and you stay away, I'll come back tonight and to get some of that treasure. And after the Lord had gone, who should come up but Mary? And she was a maid that lived and worked in the Lord's castle. And they were sweethearts. And Mary said to Jack, now just be careful, because I've seen the Lord. And he's got a knife, and I think he means you harm. So just be careful. I can look after myself, said Jack. Now, later on, the earth began to rumble and tremble. And to Jack's amazement, the trees uprooted themselves. There was a great circle of oak trees with a great oak in the centre. People called it Old Crowthy. The trees uprooted themselves and started down the hillside. And the birch trees that in the lower part of the hillside, they uprooted themselves and joined the oak trees. And they spun round and dancing, having a merry old time, intertwined, dancing round and round and round to the sounds of fairy music. And Jack was in a maze as he watched them dance. And then who should come up behind him was the Lord. And he said, now, Jack, you stay away, because I'm going to get that treasure from the great oak's birth pit. And he went down there with a bag and started collecting all the treasure. Lots and lots of treasure, gold and silver and diamonds and pearls. Now, Jack, he remembered what his mother said, and so he went to one of the smaller holes left by one of the smaller oak trees, and he collected just a small amount of gold and silver. And he found a gold ring. Oh, well, Mary and I are going to get married, so that will do very nicely. But then there was a rumbling and a churning. And Mary, at the edge of his hole where he was, said, Jack, 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 come on, quick, 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 the trees are returning. And Jack tried to get up and he tried to scramble up the side, but he couldn't get out. All the earth was just tumbling down the side there and he couldn't get a foothold until he remembered the woolen rope that his mother had given him. And so he took it out of his bag and he threw one end up to Mary and she tied it off there. And he was able to scramble up that woolen rope with 12 loops in it. And he went up. And so there was Mary and there was Jack. And they hid to far side, watching the trees return, bouncing along the hillside, the birch trees going down to their holes in the far side of the valley, and the oak trees and the great oak on the higher part of the hillside. And they plonked themselves, or about to plonk themselves down. And Jack said to me, we better go and warn the Lord, because he's down in the great oak's birth pit. We've got to go and ask him and go and tell him that the trees are returning. And I shouted down to the Lord, the trees are returning, get out there quick. But the Lord wouldn't listen. He was too busy collecting as much gold and silver and treasure he could into his bag. He wouldn't listen, he couldn't hear. And eventually the great oak plonked itself down into its birth pit, along with all the oak trees around and the birch trees down below. And so the Lord was, in his greediness, he was buried alive and was never seen again. But Jack, he had a certain amount of treasure. And the nephew of the Lord, he took over the estate and he paid Jack a better wage for being a shepherd. And with the money that he'd got, the treasure he'd got, he exchanged it with some money and was able to, with the better wage from the nephew of the Lord, he's able to build a nice cottage, nice white cottage. And eventually, Jack and Mary were married. He was able to put that gold ring on her finger. And so Jack and Mary and his mother were able to live in that cottage for many, many years. Very happy. And that's the story of Jack and the dancing trees.
Yay! Oh, thank you. That's fabulous. I love that a laird got his comeuppance by being under an oak tree. That's fab. I've got like I think I told my dancing silver bet story. I really love dancing tree stories. It's just, and it's lovely that there are more than one of them.
Yeah.
That's fabulous.
The traditional Scottish story, yes.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
often
something.
talk about it this time of year. We've been in midsummer, but
Yeah,
it's good to hear
it's
it.
lovely.
Yeah.
Omar, I think Omar's had to go, which was a shame because it would have been lovely to have a story from the cafe. But never mind, maybe he'll pop back in later. But I have Tony down next. Tony, are you telling tonight? Well, you'll need to unmute yourself if you are. Hang on, unmute yourself, my dear. Still muted.
Oh. How's that?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Lovely.
Right, good. That's fine. I'm using shortcuts rather than obviously using the mouse and that there. So as long as you can hear me, that's fine, because I told a story. I think it was at Rona Barber's a few months ago, and I told this story. In my own part of it, absolutely brilliant, this story. And then at the end of it, I sat there, and there was not a sound from the other end.
Oh,
and
no!
I realised, just a minute. And I said, did you hear that story? No.
Oh no! Just talking to yourself.
Yeah, I was talking to the dog. I think the dog enjoyed it. Anyway,
Yeah.
I told it again another time. So, yeah, I do have a story. And the ring went from you two to Keith, and then Keith was in Midsummer. So I'm going to tell you a Midsummer tale.
Lovely.
And for this tale, you're going to have to come to the North Country of England to the northwest of England, to the county of Cumbria. And some of you may be more familiar with that as being the Lake District. Now, to the eastern edge of Cumbria lies the beautiful River Eden and the Eden Valley. And the river begins its journey up in the hills of eastern Cumbria. And it ends its journey in the Solway Firth at Carlisle. It's flowing north. It's a beautiful, beautiful valley. Now, in that valley, there is a small village called Little Salkeld. And high on the hill above Little Salkeld is a grassy plateau. A beautiful, beautiful atmospheric place. And you can look to the west and you can see across the Lakeland Fells. And in midsummer, if you're up there late evening, you can see the sun setting. And if you look to the north, you can see the shimmering sands of the Solway Firth and the southern Scottish hills beyond that. Now, on that grassy plateau, there is a stone circle, or to be more accurate, a stone oval. Quite a large one. It's about 70 meters across. And there's a collection of stones, and just outside, quite a circle, is a large stone, which is known locally as Long Meg. The whole stones and the large stone called Long Meg and her daughters. And the large stone, it would take two of us with arms, fingers touching, to encompass the whole of that stone, that square-sided stone. It stands about 2 meters, no, more than 2 meters, I'm 2 meters, 3 meters high. And it's got on it very weathered runic carvings. Now, historians will tell you that that circle dates back some 4,000 years. But you can't always trust historians. So I shall tell you the true story of that, how that circle came to be. We must go back perhaps some 400 years to the village of Little Salkeld, and there lived a lady called Margaret, known locally as Meg. Now, Meg was a practitioner of the black arts, for Meg and her daughters were witches. And they lived on the edge of the village, and the village priest, he only knew of their activities, but they were tolerated, and they in turn tolerated him and his religion. The only time that there might be problems, issues, as far as the priest was concerned, that should Midsummer and the Halloween Samhain, I think I've got that, pronounced that right, those two festivals celebrated by the witches, that should they happen on a Saturday, the priest was concerned that their celebrations might fall over into the Sabbath, onto Sunday. So he and Meg had this agreement that come Midsummer Eve, that she would ensure that any celebrations they were having up on that hill would finish by midnight. And that was how they agreed it. Now, one year, the priest noticed that Midsummer did, in fact, was on a Saturday. And he went along to Meg to remind her that the agreement they had, that's fine, said Meg, that's fine. But I cannot speak for my daughters, who are now older and more willful. But I'll have words and do what I can. The priest went back to his church, hoping that Meg and the young witches would stick with this agreement. Well, a couple of weeks before Midsummer, Meg gathered the young witches together to plan their celebrations for the evening, their food, the music, entertainment, if you wish, whatever witches would plan to do on Midsummer's Eve. And she reminded her young witches of the agreement she had with the priest, the old priest. But the young witches, they were not impressed. They were not having their midsummer party spoilt by, look, some silly old fool, as one of them said. And the rest, and Meg said, well, just this once, just this once. Whatever, yeah, yeah, whatever you say. Yes, possibly. But she knew that there was no sense of agreement there. And, well, Meg herself was concerned about Midsummer's Eve. Well, Midsummer's Eve came, and up onto the hillside went all the witches, and they were going to party. They were going to party. The sky was clear blue, the sun was setting in the west. They were going to party. They were going to do whatever witches did on that evening. And as the evening grew on, to 11:30, the village clock, you could see the village clock, it came to 11:30. And Meg called an end to the party. She paid and dismissed the musicians which had come with them. What? What? Cried the young witches. What? A good party doesn't start till 11:30. And they sat down in protest. They were not going anywhere. But coming up the hillside, they could see, because in the north country of England, on a good Midsummer's Eve, why, it's light almost till midnight. Coming up the hill was a figure, a lone figure dressed in a long black coat and a wide-brimmed hat put down across his brow. Strange garb, one might think, for a warm midsummer. And as the figure grew nearer, they could see that under his arm he carried a violin, a fiddle. Well, the young witches thought this was possibility. And as the figure approached, he said to them, "Are you in need of some music, young ladies? You look like you might need some." "Of course we need some music," said the young witches, and they leapt up, ready to dance. They were ready to party all night long. And that figure picked up that violin, that fiddle, and he put it to his chin, and he began to play the loudest jig you could ever hear. Music that would wake the very hounds of hell. Meg wanted nothing to do with this. She packed her bags and was about to leave. And if any of them had looked closely at that figure, as the wind moved the bottom of his cloak, they would have seen not 2 feet, but 2 cloven hooves. For they were being entertained by the very devil himself, Old Nick. And those witches, they were going to party all night long. And Meg knew that nothing but ill would come of this. Now, down in the church, the priest was pacing up and down as the evening went on, and he too was watching the clock. And at 11:30, he heard the music stop. His hopes were raised. But then he heard the sound of that fiddle, that violin. Now, that priest, he knew exactly who was playing that music. And he dropped to his knees. He dropped to his knees, rubbing his hands, praying that what he was hearing was not true. But then, as he prayed for their souls, and the church clock struck midnight, out of that clear blue sky came a crash of thunder and a bolt of lightning onto that hillside, turning all witches and Meg herself into stone. And that is how they stand to this very day. And should you go up onto that hillside, you will see those stones. You will see the tall pillar, which is known as Long Meg, just outside that circle as Meg was beginning to leave. And it is said that should you be able to walk round those stones once, twice, 3 times, and come up with the same number each time, then those witches will come to life and they will chase you down that very hill. And that is my telling of the legend of Long Meg and her daughters. I hope you have enjoyed.
Thanks, Tony. That was awesome. I loved it.
Hang on a minute, Justine. Was I actually facing? I wasn't facing you, was I?
No, you were facing away, but it was quite atmospheric, though.
Oh, that's what happens because I can't see the screen, of course. I've got a swivel. Oh, I'm on a swivel chair here. I'm so sorry that I wasn't actually. No, I wasn't facing my audience.
I didn't want to stop you mid-flow, though. So
it wasn't atmospheric. You could have done. Don't worry about doing that. I just obviously swiveled. Oh, I wasn't even talking to the dog that time.
We could hear the dog, though. Like, I definitely heard dog sound. Like, joining in part way through.
Oh, I'm sorry about that, guys. I must make sure my chair doesn't move next time. Right.
I feel
anyway, I enjoy telling that story.
It was fab, and that is a step up from when you told a story and no one could hear it. So you know,
yeah. Oh, thanks, Justin. I don't know whether that's a compliment or not.
It is one step at a time.
And the way you were positioned, it made the whole story seem more mysterious.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Just this is just platitude, folks. This is. But
it might have been accidental, but it worked for us.
I know, as long as you heard the story, I enjoy telling that one.
You could have styled it out, Tony, and gone, and that was my choice, artistically. Always style it out. All right.
Next.
I loved it anyway. So I've got Norman next and then Chris. Is that all right for you guys? Yeah. Lovely. Norman, are you ready with your tale? Oh, before I do that, I have to share my link in case anyone wants to put any virtual coins in my virtual hat. That is the link. Right, done that bit. Okay, Norman, over to you.
Okay, thank you. It's strange how the setting of a story or the circumstances of the story fit themselves to what does go on. And I don't think you have to worry about you were looking in the wrong direction, because it did add to the story that you're looking off to as if you were seeing Meg and the others dancing.
Yeah.
And we're not just being nice. It did add for me that extra element of the story. And
we're not that nice, Tony, honestly.
No, sometimes not.
I don't get many nice comments from anybody, you two, but that's very kind. Yes. Anyway, come on, Nori.
I wasn't too sure what story to tell, both are short. So, but I mentioned a couple anecdotes when we were first starting out, and one of them is Shauna Lee and her partner and I were at Festival at the Edge, or or what used to be the Edge, and then it switched. It is physically the Edge, but the name of it was edged over. But Shauna Lee and her partner, and does anybody know who his name is? Because
Simon.
What? Simon.
Simon
and Shauna Lee were sitting at the Story Stone, and they made up a story about a ring, among other things. It did go on, and it's lots of fun. And the story ring was lost in the ocean. And Simon, whose turn it was to pick up the story, said, and then the fishmonger gave the sea to his true love. And I thought, good catch. And so that was one. And the other one thought I've had is one I have to really let work on me, because the story of the man who was traveling and the bird was countering against him and fighting against him every step of the way. This is the story I want to find in the ending for. And what he doesn't know is that the bird that seems to be his adversary every step of the journey is his own true love who's been enchanted. And so if he does not, she will not be unenchanted until he makes it back.
Oh.
And yet the greatest adversary that he has is her.
Oh.
Hopefully it ends happily ever after. I'm still working on that part.
You'll find out when you get there.
I'll find out when I get there. This is a story that has been a favorite of mine. It comes from the Isle of Man. And it's about to do with apples and mermaids and wandering.
Yeah.
Let's see, I hope I've got the sound here.
Oh, yeah.
Recording. Original sound is on. I'm
Okay.
going to have to put it on. Apologies. Okay. Testing. Does it come through?
Yes, you're good.
Thank you. Once, a long time ago, on the island of Man, there's a young lad named Jack. They're always named Jack, aren't they? And he would see, and like a lot of other Jacks on the island of Man, he was a fisherman. And he liked to go down to the ocean, and he'd sit by with his flute and he would play. But one day, Jack fell in love, married a young woman, and they had a son. And the son grew up, and he took up the business of his father, which was fishing. And so Jack says, "Father, I see that you have not been fishing for a long time, but you must teach me your trade." And so the father taught young man how to go to fish. And until one day, he went out for his first foray into the ocean to go and catch fish, to take up the trade of his father. And young Jack did. And the father, just before, though, they went past the apple tree, and he plucked 3 apples from the apple tree, and he gave them to his son Jack. And he says, "Jack, this will give you luck." Now his son wondered about this, but he took the apples, good advice from his father, and so he went down to the ocean to go fishing. Now, as I said, he took him a while to learn how to fish, and so he had been away for some time. But he loaded up the boat, went into where a good fishing spot had been given to him, and as he sat there ready to throw his net, when suddenly out of the water there popped a mermaid. "Hello, Jack! Jack, old Jack, it's been so many years since I've seen you." And he says, "Well," said the young lad, says, "Which Jack? Well, what do you mean?" "Well, my father's Jack too." "Well, whatever Jack you are, have you got some land eggs for me?" "Jack always brought me land eggs." And the young man thought about that for a moment. What's a land egg? What do you think a land egg was? It's a riddle. Ah, he remembered his father's words, "They'll bring you luck." And he remembered the apples. And so he reached into his pocket and he threw the apple to the mermaid, who caught it deftly and started munching at it. And when she'd eaten thrown the core into the water, he threw another apple. That too was eaten until the 3rd land egg was consumed. And sure enough, there was a lot of good luck in the fishing. And so Jack would go out day after day fishing, and the landmaid would munch away at with the apples. And they would chat with one another. Now, until one day, well, Jack was beginning to think, this is monotonous work. I don't know. I understand why my father gave up fishing, and I don't want to fish anymore. And so he decided to go and travel the great wide world. But before he went down to the mermaid one last time. And one last time he tossed an apple. She caught the apple and munched away at it. And he said, I am leaving. I've decided to see the great wide world. Well, who will bring me my land eggs? Jack thought about this for a moment. Well, I'll stay long enough to plant some trees. And then when those trees are produce their own land eggs, then you will have apples of your own. And he planted those trees next to the ocean where the branches overlooked the sea. And then he left. And the mermaids, and then he sailed off into the great wide world. And what happened to his story? We do not know, for the story does not tell us. But the tree began to grow and grow and grow year after year, but it produced blossoms but no apples. And the mermaid waited each year, waiting for the land eggs to come, but they never came. And so the mermaid said, well, if I can't have the land apples, I'm going to have the lad. And she swam off in the direction he had sailed into. And she disappeared and was never ever seen again. And as for the trees, well, they did grow. Eventually, apples did grow over the ocean. And when the winds in the summer and the fall began to blow, the apples would fall into the water, and they floated off towards the great wide world, and where they went we do not know. And when this spring came and the blossoms covered the trees and the blossoms began to blow in the spring wind, the blossoms blew away into the wind, off into the west, and where they went the story does not say, but they did not return. And so they have blown to this day, that each spring the apples fall into the water, the blossoms blow in the wind, and where they go, we do not know. And that's the end of that story.
Thank you. That's such a lovely image at the end, isn't it? Like the apples.
Yeah,
like
that's a lovely story, Norman.
Yeah. It's a story of when, as they say, the islands where the men were the island was people rich and land poor, and so there wasn't a place for them, so they had to go. They had to leave.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Let's pass over to Chris. Chris, are you ready?
Yes. Hello.
Fabulous. Let me spotlight
My
you.
name's Chris Bell. Live in the States in Boston, Mass. And I tell personal stories. So it's a hot summer night. I'm 7 years old, and I can't sleep because I am so angry. I just spent the entire day with my next door neighbor, Angie, and she's no longer my friend. First, we rode our bikes all the way down to the pond to look for turtles, but all we found were a bunch of fat frogs. Then, after lunch, Angie said the princess was having a party, so we had to make at least 100 mud pies with stick soup and pine cone pudding. Then it got super hot, and my mom let us run through the sprinkler, even though my dad says we're going to kill the grass. I mean, it was a really good day, until it started to get dark, and Angie said we should catch fireflies. So my mom gave us an empty mayonnaise jar, and we chased all these little blinking lights all over the backyard until the streetlights came on. By then, we caught enough fireflies to light up a big room at night, and we agreed to take turns One day I would keep the jar in my room. The next day, Angie keeps the jar in her room. But because she's taller than me and thinks she's the boss, she just snatched the jar from my hands and said she was keeping them, even after I won rock, paper, scissors twice. So now I'm lying in my boring bedroom, staring at a dark ceiling, thinking about how she's over there watching this amazing light show. And friends are supposed to share, but she didn't do that. So I'm taking off this friendship bracelet she gave me. And tomorrow, when her family leaves for church, I'm gonna sneak in her house and get my fireflies back. Now, I have the perfect view of Angie's house from my bedroom window. So after they leave, I sneak around the back door, quietly turn the knob, and just walk in. See, this was a quiet suburb in the 1970s. People just weren't in the habit of locking their doors back then. So once inside, I'm walking around, I think, wow, these people are rich. They have so many things that I've only seen on game shows. So I decide taking some of their precious valuables would be much better payback. 60 seconds later, I'm running out the back door, juggling an automatic coffee maker, portable AM radio, and a softball trophy. Then I stash the loot in a big flowering bush in their backyard. The next day, I overhear Angie's mother talking to mine outside in the backyard. I lean over my window and I can tell she's upset. She says, I can't believe they took our coffee maker and radio. And I thought, wait till she finds out about the softball trophy. They were probably watching us. I was, just like your daughter was watching my fireflies all night. They must not have known my husband's a police detective. What? I back away from the window and think I am going to jail. And over the next 2 weeks, I'm scared to leave my bedroom because every car that drives by looks like a police cruiser. Every dog that barks sounds like a trained canine. And every knock on the door, it feels like a raid. But then it gets worse. At least 30 people to show up and search Angie's house. They're looking around the yard, looking under the porch with big flashlights, using ladders to get up on the roof. And I knew they would eventually find the evidence and trace my footsteps right back to my house, just like the Pink Panther. Terrified, I go to my father and confess everything. And with a confused look, he says, so you really thought the police were searching their house? And I say, yes, I even heard a helicopter go by. He sighs. Son, Angie's family decided to sell their house. Those were just the people who wanted to buy it. After a month, summer finally ends, and I'm off punishment. But now, Angie's family is gone. They've moved away. And now I regret getting so angry about the fireflies because as I look at the backyard where we used to play, I realize I just lost my best friend. 35 summers come and go, and I'm now a husband, father, and I'm living my childhood dream of working 8 hours a day in a cubicle. One day I get a friend request on Facebook that breaks the monotony. It takes me a few seconds to realize it's my childhood friend Angie. We connect, and over the next 2 weeks, we talk about our kids, jobs, and relationships. But the whole time, I really want to talk about fireflies and unlocked doors. There were a few times I almost brought it up, but I stopped when I envisioned her angry response. But part of me thinks this is stupid. You were only 7 years old. But another part of me can't ignore what I've learned about the world since then. You see, growing up, we were one of the first black families to move into our predominantly white town. And this was the 70s during the school busing race riots in South Boston. The anger and fear from those events bled into the surrounding towns like mine. And here I was at 7 years old thinking I was just making things fair. But in reality, I was stealing from my neighbor. And even worse, I was reinforcing a very negative stereotype about racial integration. Knowing my actions caused Angie's family to move away, it always made me feel like I had a rock in my stomach. So one sleepless night, I'm lying in bed just thinking about it. And with every toss and turn, that rock feels heavier and heavier. So one night, I decide to try and remove it. I write a long Facebook message filled with guilt and shame, and I address it to the one person I felt was truly affected by my actions. Angie's now 70-year-old mother. I send the message, and the next day I can see she opened it. But there's no response. And now that rock in my stomach, it feels like an ulcer. 3 days later, I'm leaving work, and my phone dings with her response. Hi, Chris. I don't remember you ever stealing anything from us. I just remember you as a great kid who I liked very much. But since you remember it, it must be true. I completely forgive you. Please, don't waste another second thinking about this. And in that moment, I feel like I'm 7 years old again. And I'm back in my childhood bedroom holding that big jar of fireflies. But now I'm just really tired. So for the first time, I imagine what it would feel like to simply open the window, unscrew the lid, and watch them go. That night, the little boy who still lives somewhere inside of me slept so well. Thank you.
That was beautiful, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
lovely. That was lovely, Chris. I love those personal stories, and I do occasionally try and write some of them. But the skill of that, which you have, Chris,
Yeah.
is making them listenable to by us. It's a personal story, but that's the skill in making it so that we can listen to it. You obviously go through it, and people do often write things, and you think, yes, it's a bit boring, this, but you would have the skill of actually making it very, very listenable, Chris. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Tom.
You always make me laugh, and you always make me cry, and you always make me remember like things, you know, that kind of
Yeah.
hot summer thing that I remember playing in the neighbors' like gardens. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, I'm 7 again as well. It's just,
Yeah.
it's lovely.
Thank you,
And also the
Justin.
Pink Panther. Like,
Okay.
I remember watching the Pink Panther on
Yeah.
TV, like Saturday morning cartoons. Great stuff. Right. Should we have a tale from me and then we'll go around again? I feel bad that I don't have any tunes. I'm going to learn some tunes for next time. But story. I feel like I might, you know what? I know it's kind of similar to Norman's, but I might tell the first mermaid story I learned. Do you fancy another mermaid story? Shall we go there? It's a Scottish story, and we've kind of been to Scotland, so it's kind of connecting some things up. Right, let me spotlight myself. And I haven't told it for a really long time, but it just reminded me when Norman told his. So let's see how it falls out of my mouth tonight. So, once upon a time, a very long time ago, in the far north of Scotland, there was a young man, and he was a fisherman, and lived on kind of one of the islands just off the coast. And he would do what most of the young fishermen did. They would kind of, you know, go out, get their catch, and they would bring it to market, the main kind of town of all of the islands. And every week when they went to market with their fish, there would always be on the flower stall this beautiful young woman. She had blonde hair, she had blue eyes, she was everything every young fisherman dreamed of, apparently. And all of the different young fishermen there, they would try to woo her. And even our young fisherman. He doesn't have a name in this story, so I'm just going to keep calling him my young fisherman. And he, even though he was shy, he would go up to her each time. Sometimes he would bring her the biggest fish that he'd caught. And she would always smile and look at him sweetly. And as the weeks went past, he realized how much he loved her. And then one day, he'd made enough money from his catch, and he'd saved up. And he went up to her. He said, "We've been talking for several weeks now, and I feel like we've got on really well. And I wondered if perhaps you would consider marrying me." And he produced a ring. And she took the ring and she looked at it. And she smiled. And then she laughed. The fisherman that comes by and gives me fish. Why would I want to marry you? No, you take this back. Off you go. What? That's the best joke I've heard all day. Well, the young man, he was so embarrassed. He'd completely read the situation wrong, and he just didn't even feel like he could go back to sell his fish there. In fact, so extreme was his embarrassment that he moved away from where he lived. He moved to the remotest island he could find, and he set up a little house there. He built it himself, and he went out fishing from it every day. And he even went to like a different market to sell his fish. And one day, he was out fishing from his new little island, and he threw his net over the side, and the catch felt a little bit heavier than usual. And so he hauled it in, and he hauled it in. And as he saw coming over the side of the boat, that amongst all those fish, there was a great big mermaid. And he popped her down in the boat, and she went, "Oi, can you put me back? I was just having my dinner down there." He said, "No, I know the rules. If I catch a mermaid, then I get a wish." She said, "Oh, yeah, that. All right, then tell me, what's your wish?" And he knew instantly what to wish for. He said, "My wish is that my true love will agree to marry me." She said, "Really? True love? I can give you riches, I can give you fine houses, but true love, that takes a while." He said, "No, that is all I want. I have nothing else that I want in life. I just want my true love to marry me." She said, "Fine." And she produced somewhere from her mermaid pockets, I don't know where they had pockets, a ring. She said, "Now, as I said, true love, magic takes a little longer, but a year and a day to this day, if you give this ring to your true love, I guarantee you she will agree to marry you and your wish will come true." The fisherman took it and went, "A year and a day, that's a long time." She said, "Yes, it is, but that's how long true love takes. I mean, if you wanted gold, I could give it to you instantly." He said, "No, that's fine, I'll wait." And he took the ring and he put it in his top pocket and buttoned it up so it'd be safe. She said, "Well, you've got to put me back now." He said, "All right then." And he tipped her back in and he went back to his home. When he went out fishing the next day, he could see her. She was sat up upon a rock, just combing her hair. And she waved at him, and he waved back. And a couple of days later, saw her again. And he was sailing a little bit closer to her rock. And she said, "How are you?" He said, "Yeah, but I'm good, thanks. Good catch today." She said, "Good." And this carried on. And they started to just, chat and pass the time. And then one day, as he was about to set out to sea, looked like a beautiful clear day, and he saw her. He saw her splashing about in the shallows near to his hut on the island. And she was waving and waving at him. And he came down to see what she wanted. And she said, "I've been out to sea, there's a storm coming in. I know how clear the sky looks now, but if you take out to sea in your little boat today, it will be the end of you." And he said, "Oh, don't be ridiculous. It's a perfect blue sky." She said, "Please, I consider you my friend now and I want you to be safe. Just humour me and stay inside today." The fisherman said, "Well, all right then." Decided to humour her. Thought it won't hurt for one day if I don't go fishing. So he went back inside and she swam off into the depths. And sure enough, not an hour had passed when the sky clouded over and the dark clouds came. And not an hour later, there was the crack of thunder and the flash of lightning, and the shutters on his little cottage rattled. And he knew that without her warning, there would be no way he would have made it home. The storm went on for 3-4 days until finally the clouds cleared. And he realized that he owed this mermaid his life. And so he thought, maybe I should do something for her since she's helped me. And so he gathered all the things that he could think of that maybe he would like to eat. He made her a cake. Don't know how he knows that cake. So anyway, he made her a cake and he wrapped it up and he put it in a picnic basket and he sailed out to where her little rock was. And there she was, combing her hair as she always did. And she said, "Oh, I'm so glad you didn't go out to sea. That was an awful storm. I stayed right at the bottom of the ocean for that." And he said, "Well, you're right. It would have been the end of me. And so I wanted to say thank you. So I baked you this cake." And she took the cake and said, "No one ever gives me anything. There was just wishes and magic." And she opened the cake and she took a bite. Oh, she'd never tasted anything like it. "This is wonderful. Thank you so much." He said, "You're very welcome." She said, "Do you want some?" And he said, "Oh, all right then." And they sat and they picnicked together and they talked. They talked about his life above the sea and her life below it. And he told her about the girl that he'd asked to marry. And this happened most of the days. He would bring out some food for her and they would talk about what they'd done that day and what they were planning on doing in their lives and those above and below worlds. And then one day, the mermaid said to the fisherman, "I suppose I won't be seeing you after tomorrow." And he said, well, why not?" And she said, "Well, I should imagine it would be a very, very understanding wife that wouldn't mind her husband having a mermaid for a best friend." And the fisherman went, "So tomorrow is a year and a day?" She said, "Tomorrow is a year and a day." She said, "But I have enjoyed your company very much, and I wish you all the best in your new married life." And the fisherman said, "Oh, well, thank you." That night, he put his best suit out, ready. He took that little ring out of his top pocket, put it in a little box he'd made for the occasion. And the next morning, he set out, and he sailed in his fishing boat that he'd scrubbed clean for the occasion, and he headed back to the place where she had been, to the place where the girl with the blonde hair and the blue eyes had humiliated him, but he knew he had the magic this time. And so this time she would say yes. And he sailed and he sailed and he sailed, and he'd only got about halfway there when he suddenly thought, "I'm not sure that I'm going in the right direction. I'm not sure that this is my true love anymore." And before he knew what he was doing, he'd turned that boat around and headed back to where he'd come from. And the mermaid, she was sat on her rock combing her hair as usual, and she saw him in the distance. And she called out to him, "What are you doing back? Is the marriage arranged so soon?" And he said nothing, but drew his boat closer and closer. And she said, "So tell me what happened." And he said, "Well, I only got halfway there, and I started thinking about true love." She said, "Yes, and?" He said, "Well, perhaps my true love isn't the girl with the blonde hair and the blue eyes that rejected me. Perhaps it's the mermaid with the red hair and the green eyes that sits in front of me and talks to me every day." The mermaid went, well, that's not fair. I mean, I gave you the ring, and if I'm your true love, then I couldn't say no." And he took the ring and he threw it overboard. He said, "I only wish you to marry me if it's your wish." And the mermaid thought about it. And she thought about what she'd said and how much she'd enjoyed his company. And she realized that without even noticing it, that she'd fallen in love with him too. And she said, "Well, if it is your wish, then it is my wish." And so they agreed to be married, and they had a fine wedding on the shores of the island with all her family in the sea and all his family on the shore. And they spent their time both in the above world and the below world. And in both places, they lived happily ever after. So, thank you.
That's a lovely, sweet story, Justine. I'm glad it ended like that. I was thinking it's going to be a twist here, but that was lovely.
It's very sweet. It's kind of like it's a couple of stories kind of mashed together.
Yeah.
There's an original story where like there's kind of another character and he ends up kind of like marrying her, but but she's really servile, and I was like, nah.
No, he made the right choice in the end. Yes.
He did make the right choice.
Chasing around after a girl who didn't really want to be with him anyway in the first place. No, he did the right thing.
When I tell that to kids, I always get them to choose like what the fisherman puts in his picnic basket. that mermaid's had a lot of pizza and McDonald's, I have to tell you.
That was a great story.
Again, I haven't told it for a long time. Thank you for letting me tell them. How are we doing? We've got time to go around again, I think, if we're up for that. Keith, do you have another tale for us? Lovely. Let me spotlight you and then you can unspotlight yourself. There we go.
Well, nobody knows why. But one day when a father and a daughter are walking along the edge of a cliff, the father took hold of his daughter and threw her over the cliff. And she went down, down, down into the sea. And then down, 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 down into the bottom of the ocean. And she lay there in the bottom of the ocean. The fish came along and over time ate all her flesh and plucked out all her eyes. And so she laid there. The tide would just gently move her a little bit. She lay there in the bottom of the ocean, skeleton woman. Now all the local fishermen around where the cliff was, they thought that the place was haunted and they'd never go fishing there. But there was a stranger who came fishing. And he rowed out in his canoe, in his kayak. And he let down his line. And the hook went down, 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 down into the bottom of the ocean and caught hold of Skeleton Woman, caught hold of her ribs. And the fisherman, he tugged, and he pulled. I've got a big one here. And he pulled on the fishing line, reeling it in, and the hook that was entangled in Skeleton Woman's ribs went up, 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 up. And Skeleton Woman nearly reached daylight. And when the fisherman thought, she's got this big fish, it's nearly here. And he turned to get hold of his net. But when he turned back, there was a skull with empty eye sockets and teeth that were grabbed on the edge of his kayak. And he screamed. He took hold of a paddle and he knocked Skeleton Woman off the edge of his boat. And then he started to paddle as fast as he could for the shore. But his line was still attached to Skeleton Woman. She came bouncing along the top of the sea, bouncing along like she was water skiing. And he reached the shore and he jumped onto the ice and he started to run across. the ice. But still he had the line, and Skeleton Woman was being towed along, bouncing, bouncing, bouncing along behind him. He couldn't get away from her. And at one point they passed through some fish that had been lying on the side there, and she grabbed out her bony hand and she ate some of the fish. And eventually he reached his igloo, his home, and he rushed inside and shut the door. Now I'm safe. But then he struck a match and he lit the tallow candle, and there's was the Skeleton Woman sitting on the side of his igloo. And she's all twisted, and one leg was all tangled up in her rib cage. Well, the fisherman, he felt sorry for her, he had a compassionate man. He went across and he rearranged Skeleton Woman's skeleton until she was all in the right place. Then he took a seal skin robe and he wrapped it round her. She remained very quiet because she was frightened that not to disturb the man or do something rash and be like, that he might be like her father and throw her out into the night. Well, the fisherman, he crawled over to his own bed and he wrapped himself there in his bed, with his sealskin sheets and clothes, and he went to sleep. And he had a dream that night. Perhaps it was a sad dream, we don't know, but a tear started to roll down his cheek. And Skeleton Woman, she just very, very carefully, she crawled over and she started to drink that tear. And that tear became another tear until there was a whole river of tears flowing down his cheek. And Skeleton Woman, she drank and drank and drank and drank. And then she reached inside the rib cage of the fisherman and took out his heart. And then she started to sing. And she sang and sang and sang and rubbed his heart over her face. And so she had a chin and a nose, a whole face and eyes, eyebrows and long golden hair. She rubbed it over her body, and she had a fully formed body with long arms and legs and fully formed breasts. And then she sang again and sang the clothes off the fisherman, and she crawled over and nestled in beside him, taking out her heart and putting it into his chest. And when they woke up in the morning, there they were cuddling together, and they became man and wife. And they'd go out fishing, and the fish would gladly give up their bodies to the fisherman and his wife, because they knew who she was and she spent all that time with him. And so the fisherman and his wife, Skeleton Woman, lived a long and happy life.
Oh, thank you, Key. Like, I tell that all the time. It's a really long time since I've heard someone else tell it, so it's really nice. And I think that, the last time I heard someone else tell it, I think it was Paul Jackson, and he tells it like really bleakly, like kind of you get a real sense of the landscape and stuff. So it's it's nice to hear someone else's.
Tim Bowley, yeah.
There's a version somewhere on the World Storytelling Cafe of me telling that somewhere. Like I can't, way back, probably somewhere in lockdown if you can find it.
There's a very early version from a book called Tales from the Igloo. It predates that one.
Because that one's from Women Who Run with the Wolves, isn't it?
Yes.
That kind of structure.
Nicola Estes. I've forgotten the title, but roughly you have the whole story of the, and I'm resisting to say bare bones, but um, Sarah, I got that out. But it is an old Inuit story.
Yeah. There seemed to be a whole load of controversy about like kind of whether Pinkola Estes, whether
Uh,
she made it up or whether like it was an old one. I don't
it's
really
well,
mind. I
the
think it's a good
reason
story
why
either way.
yeah, the reason why I mention it is not so
Mm,
much as that it shouldn't be told, is
mm,
that it's a way of respecting the history
mm.
of the
Yeah,
story, where it came from. It's a very
yeah,
powerful story, and
yeah,
I have
yeah,
a
definitely.
version of my own which I might tell someday, but it's substantially different from what
Mm,
Women Who Run with the Wolves, because I get it from the other book,
yeah,
but the same issue still remains, and
yeah,
but it's a beautiful and powerful story. So thank you very much,
yeah.
Keith.
Lovely. Thank you. All right. Yeah, we were as Tony next. Tony, do you have another tale for us?
I do. Can you hear me?
We can hear you and we can see you.
Right. Now then, Justine, I've got my feet wedged here under the table.
All
If I
right.
start to drift off camera,
Yeah,
just shout, will you?
I will. I will be ready to shout.
Yeah, because
I'm
the
good.
story's not so serious it needs disrupting. So, yeah, my first date was never like that. But I shall, yeah, lower the cultural bar now and tell you a story about baby elephant.
Yeah.
Walking through the jungle one morning was a herd of elephants, nose to tail. And at the front of that line of elephants was. Now, if Walt Disney's to be believed, then Jungle Book, it was the Colonel. No, 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 no. Terribly sorry. Elephants are a very matriarchal system, and it was probably grandmother elephant, auntie elephant, cousin elephant, mummy elephant, sister elephant. At the bottom was baby elephant. Because you see, elephants, after they've done what they do to create little baby elephants, they go off and do male elephant things like squirting water at each other at a water hole, kicking a football around, so, things like that. Anyway, going through the jungle was this line of elephants, and at the bottom end of it was baby elephant. Now, baby elephant never been through the jungle before, and everything was fascinating to him. He'd keep letting go of the tail in front of him. He'd be sniffing at the flowers, and they'd be saying, "Hang on, baby elephant, hang on, baby elephant, you'll get lost, hang on." And he'd hang on again and a bit further, and then he'd stop to look at a little ant on the floor. "Baby elephant, hang on, baby elephant." And he'd stop to look at something else, and then, well, lo and behold, there was baby elephant all on his own. All the other elephants had trooped off, and baby elephant, and he thought, which way have the elephants gone? So he went along the path, and no, he couldn't. Did they go this way? Could they go down that path? Could they go down that path? And he wandered off down this path, and he came to Monkey up in the tree. And he said to Monkey, "Monkey," he said, "I'm lost. Will you be my friend?" And Monkey looked down at baby elephant and said, "Don't be ridiculous, baby elephant. You can't be my friend. If you come up on this branch here, it'll send it crashing to the ground. Now, don't be ridiculous. Go away." Baby elephant walked on a little more, and he came to the mouse. Little mouse, he said, little mouse, will you be my friend?" Little mouse squeaked, "Don't be ridiculous, baby elephant. No, how can I be your friend? If you try and get down this hole of mine, you'll get stuck. No, that won't. No, you can't be my friend. Go away." Baby elephant walked on, and he saw a frog sitting on a lily pad on a pond, and he said, "Frog, will you be my friend?" I need Norman now for some sound effects, don't I? Rabbit, rabbit. So he said, "No, don't be ridiculous. If you come and sit on this lily pad, then we'll both sink to the bottom of the pond. No, you can't be my friend. Now, go away." And so baby elephant trots on, and he walks along the path, and suddenly all the animals of the jungle are running towards him. swinging through the trees, slithering on the ground, jumping and hopping along past him. Lion, lion, they're all shouting. Lion, run away, run away. Baby Elephant, he didn't know about Lion. Oh, well, perhaps Lion will be my friend. And he walked a little bit further on, and there he came face to face with Lion. Oh, said Baby Elephant, will you be my friend? Be your friend, said Lion. Don't be ridiculous. Lions don't have friends. Now, get out of my way. I want one of those animals for my lunch. Oh, said Baby Elephant. Oh, that's not very nice. Of course it's not very nice, said Lion. Now, get out of my way. Well, behind Baby Elephant were all the animals looking through the leaves, looking round the trunks to see what Baby Elephant was going to do. Now, said Lion, I'll tell you one more time, get out of my way. And then Baby Elephant, he remembered those self-assertive lessons he'd had back in Elephant Nursery. And he breathed a deep breath in and he said, no, you are not coming past me. Right, said Lion. In that case, well, said Baby Elephant. And Baby Elephant, he picked that Lion up by the tail and he swung it round his head once, twice, 3 times, and smashed that Lion down on the floor. The Lion got up, dusted himself down, and said, right, he said, that's right, I'll give you one more chance, Baby Elephant. Now, will you get out of my way? Baby Elephant picked the Lion up again by his tail, swung him round once, twice, 3 times, bang on the floor again. Right, said Lion, right, okay, you win, yes, right, okay, I wasn't hungry anyway. And he turned round and walked off out of the jungle. Well, of course, all the animals now, they all rushed around Baby Elephant, climbed on him. Little Mouse sat on his foot. Frog, he came along and he leapt up onto his trunk, and Monkey sat on his head, and they were all his friend. And you see, they should have thought before they were telling Baby Elephant they didn't want to be his friend. They didn't think. They should have perhaps thought, one day we might need Baby Elephant as our friend. And that applies to, we humans as well, isn't it? We should not prejudge people. We might make good friends at some time out of people we first reject, and we don't know everything about them. And that is what these animals did. Now, as a little addendum to that, of course, lions, well, they call them the king of the jungle, but lions, well, they spend most of their time out on the grassland and prairie. You don't see many lions in the jungle, and I'll tell you why. They go hiding in that grass just in case a baby elephant may come walking past. And that's the story of Baby Elephant, the lion.
Thank you, Tony. That was awesome. I love that. I love that image of him swinging him round his head as well.
Very silly. I love that. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. It's lovely. Love a silly story. All right. Norman, do you have another tale for us, my dear?
Yes, I think I do. It'll be a short one.
Lovely.
It's a bit of a sad one for me.
Oh.
It's tied in with the story. A long time ago, I used to tell in tandem a story with my friend Sandra. And there was a story called The Mermaid's Ring. You might recognize the story because you just told it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you going to tell the original version before I messed around with it?
I'm not too sure. I could have a go at it but how would you? I don't feel quite right about telling that, anyways. But there is one line from the original story, a book by Sork Nicoleadis, that I rather like. So this is I hope this doesn't sound like a correction or something like that, but it's one of my favorite lines in the story because I think, get on with it, Norman. Um, there was once a young lad who loved a bonny lass, and he came who had hair of gold and eyes of so blue, and he went up to her, and he with the ring, and he gave her the ring and proposed to her, and she took the ring and gave it back to him with gentle words, saying that she loved somebody else, and that perhaps she could take his heart and give it to somebody else. And it'll be a long time and a long days before I do that, said he, and he stomped off. I must have, but the idea is that she was gentle, she was
Ah,
kind.
unlike my one.
It still fits. All the stories come. Well, I once had went out with a bonny lass, and she had blonde hair and blue eyes, and she was 3'10", and she played the harp. And for her, a lap harp, for Sandra, a lap harp was like a concert harp, in relationship to her size. And one day, while I was with Sandra and I were together visiting friends in southwestern Ontario, in a place called Dashwood. Yeah, and this is the weird thing. I have to say this because the woman who was with us was and with the harp. She was talking to the group of people at the conference in Halifax, and she got in front of the group of people and he says, "I'm from a place you've never heard of." And she says, "What?" And because I'd forgotten who she was. "You never heard of this place? It's called Dashwood." Like, I mean, Dashwood is about 50 people out in the middle of nowhere. But that story has a harp in it. And along came, we were sitting enjoying a beautiful summer day, evening, and the wind came up. Well, the harp was sitting on the ground between us. And what does the wind do when it blows through the strings of a harp? It begins to sing. And it's one of the most lovely sounds that there is, because you do not know where the sound is coming from and you do not know where it's going to, but it just blows, right? And the young woman says, "Where's that sound coming from?" He said, and because story ideas come from where the wind blows, I says, "Oh, don't you know? That is the wind blowing. And once a long time ago, the wind was a friend with a tree, and the most beautiful tree. But one day somebody came and cut the tree down, and from that tree they made a house. And when the house came down, they took the wood of the tree, the oak and the pine and everything, and from the oak and the pine of that house, the old house was no longer a home. They made a harp, and the harp was sitting on the ground, and the wind blew, wandering around the world looking for its friend, and it blew through the harp, and it began to sing, and it recognized the song that the harp was singing. It was the song of the old house. It was the song of its old friend, the tree. And now they are once again holding a beautiful conversation as they did long time ago. And this is a true story. It happened. And now Sandra, well, I'm still waiting for the wind to blow once again and for us to work together, because she plays the harp. She's a beautiful musician, and me, I'm still wandering like the wind does.
Oh. Do you know what's so beautiful about that, Norman? So earlier on this evening, it was just me and my daughter Jess, who some of you know doesn't speak, and she always plays the lap harp. She has a little lap harp she plays.
Oh, wonderful!
And she came into the kitchen, and and sometimes it's just strumming, but like tonight she came in and she had one tune in the bass and one tune like in the top notes, and it was the most beautiful thing, and like really kind of. So it's really lovely that you said it, because literally I had that experience of going, "Where's that beautiful music coming from?" And it was my daughter making it. So. Yeah, and you know, like music is her language, so yeah, the spirit of
Mhm.
the lap harp is clearly around this evening.
It
Yeah,
is.
it was lovely.
Thank
Oh,
you. And
oh,
that, yeah,
good stuff.
that's it's a wee bit of a tale and somewhat incomplete, but that's
But
a story as I have it, and so
yeah,
I like, and that's what I leave.
I love that. Which means we have 10 minutes left. Chris, have you got one more story to end us for
Yes, I do.
tonight?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, let me spotlight you then. There we go. Here we go. Oh, there.
All right.
Last story of the night, Chris. Off you go.
So the bartender rings the bell for last call, and my girlfriend leans in with a mischievous smile. Babe, I feel like being bad tonight. So I perk up. Laura, what are you thinking? She bites her bottom lip and says, I'm in the mood for a big pizza with onions and extra cheese. So, eager to play a little game of foodie foreplay, I say, Look, Laura, we're on vacation in another country. Let's try something different tonight. Then I describe a legendary local dish that's known for being sinfully savory and satisfying. Her eyes close with a smile that simply says, Oh, yeah, big boy, let's do it. So, after enjoying several hours of happy hour, we stumble out into the night, and I realize I have no idea where to find this food. Plus, it's 2001. Smartphones don't exist, so there's no Google, GPS, or DoorDash. So, as we stare at this maze of a strange city, I'm afraid the only thing I'm about to find my girlfriend is a cold plate of disappointment. But then I look up the street and spot the universal symbol for local knowledge and guidance, a taxi cab. Now, my skin has magical properties. It makes me completely invisible to most cab drivers. But Laura, she's a light-skinned Latina, so as the headlights approach, I'm hoping her appearance will be enough to get us picked up. The cab pulls up, hitting a curb, nearly cracking a hubcap. A scruffy older man leans out with a mustache as thick as his glasses and says, Hey, where you headed? We slide into his back seat without a second thought. Surrounded by the scent of cigarettes and stale coffee, I tell him about the legendary local dish we're looking to try, and he lights up. Ooh, I know the perfect place. Trust me, brother. And with a tap of the meter, the streets become a blur. So I ask him, Where is this place? And he says something in an accent so thick we'd need subtitles to understand. But because we left our better judgment back at the bar, we sink back into the seats, trusting it's going to be someplace with good grub. Now, we don't even make it 2 blocks before this seasoned cabbie turns into a chatty teenager. He's peppering us with random questions about living in Boston, UFOs, reincarnation. All the while, he's peering through the rearview mirror, shooting these little flirty looks at Laura. But we're so tipsy, we just laugh and get caught up in his crazy conversation. Because honestly, this is the most fun we have ever had in a cab. That is until I take a look at the meter. I can't believe our fare is already $30. And that's when I realize we've been in this damn cab for a while. So I look out the window and see that the city lights are completely gone. There's just a long stretch of highway surrounded by dark, dense forest. Sensing my silence, Laura stops laughing. I blurt out, Hey, where are we? And he says, Just 2 more minutes. So I lean forward, look, forget about the food, and his eyes go wide, like a disappointed toddler. But why? We're almost there. Trust me, brother. And he accelerates, all while muttering something that makes him sound as stable as a one-legged ladder. And that's when my mind goes into full horror movie mode. It feels like we're captives in this moving cage with cartels, cannibals, and clansmen all waiting for us in some secluded cabin. And I actually consider just jumping out. But I know at this speed we definitely break every bone as we roll down the road. And I also know that panicking isn't going to help anything right now. So I take a deep breath, give Laura's hand a reassuring squeeze, and she squeezes back, letting me know it's okay just to sit tight and wait to see where he's taking us. After several manic minutes, he finally pulls off the highway, and we roll into a small rustic town with silent streets and sleepy storefronts. The only light is coming from 3 small basement windows in a remote building at the end of the road. He pulls up, jumps out, and scurries towards the entrance. But now I can't stop my hands from shaking. Laura's nails are digging into my forearm, and we're both bracing for fight or flight. But we don't even get a chance to react, because as soon as he opens the entrance door, we get ambushed by the sound of music and laughter. Laura and I exchange a look, and our concern turns to curiosity. So we get out and follow the rhythm down the stairs. And when our eyes adjust to the light, we see a beautiful wooden bar surrounded by people holding pints and pool sticks. Our driver steps forward and announces, "These are my friends, Chris and Laura from the States." And a kaleidoscope of smiles warms the room. We're seated at a center table and surrounded by courteous questions. And then Laura's eyes absolutely double in size when the legendary local dish lands before us. It's a massive plate of of golden fries smothered in silky brown gravy and topped with tender chunks of cheese. Our driver beams, "The best poutine in all Quebec." As we eat, we learn our driver, Rene, brought us to a late night tavern in his hometown where the cab community comes to unwind after work. And we end the night listening to stories from the folks who know the people of Montreal, as well as they know the streets that connect them. On the ride back, Rene plays a series of old French love songs as Laura sleeps on my shoulder. And we arrive back at our hotel just as the morning light starts to stretch softly across the city. But now the meter mysteriously reads $0. So I give Rene 80 and he gives me back 60. And when I ask him, "Are you sure?" He just smiles and says, "Yes, trust me, brother." Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That was awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Just love that. That reminds me of my
That's it.
hitchhiking stories of like kind of being picked up by
I
cars
look
by
forward to hearing them.
dodgy things. Yeah,
Yeah. Ah, that was cool, Chris. Very good. Yeah.
love it. Love it so much. Well, that, gentlemen, is all we have time for this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to anyone that's been watching online or is watching on repeat later. We are back on the 6th of August, which I know is kind of right in the middle of festival time, but if you're around in the summer, I shall be here sharing tales. So if you can, that'd be great. And next up on World Storytelling Cafe is Despina on Friday at 6 o'clock UK time, telling children's tales. So again, if you go to worldstorytellingcafe.com for that one and click the join story button. But I think that's everything for tonight. Thank you so much. Give yourselves a round of applause for being such awesome tellers tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Justine. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank
You're
you.
welcome, guys. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Yeah, see you all again
Everyone take
soon.
care.
Bye.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.
See you soon.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.